Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Pathways Toward Accreditation, Best Practices, and Key Competencies in Sustainability Education. This background briefing is prepared in October 2024 for the participants in our upcoming Washington, D.C. workshop funded by the National Science Foundation. We can't wait to meet with you. My name is Krista Heiser, and I'm the Senior Advisor for Sustainability Education at GCSE. It has been so exciting to guide and steward this work. I'm thrilled to welcome Terry Balzer and Jordan King as facilitators for our DC workshop. Jordan has been part of the 3-year Pathways Toward Accreditation grant while he was a doctoral student at Arizona State University. He's now in a new position at University of Tennessee, and Jordan's scholarship and research has informed the best practices around curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment and evaluation. Terry Balzer is a professor and facilitator. Her area is really the leadership and organizational change, and she was part of the Pulse Project, a similar project to improve education in the life sciences discipline. So really excited to welcome both Terry and Jordan in DC next week. I'm very pleased that 4 members of the Sustainability Education Leadership Advisory Council, which has been part of this work since the beginning of our grant in 2022, 4 members of the CLAC will be joining us: Karen Spiller, Ali Whitmer, Joshua Abbott, and Daita Sergi. Thank you so much. I'm grateful for the participation and input of the CLAC. These conversations around accreditation really began decades ago in the Council for Environmental Deans and Directors, a conversation that began in the National Council for Science and the Environment, now the Global Council for Science and the Environment. The conversation really gained some focus and momentum with a 3-year grant, Pathways Toward Accreditation, from the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation to really look into this possibility of programmatic accreditation for sustainability degrees and see how this work could improve the field. The conversation has now moved to the National Sustainability Society, which is a new organization working at the interface of workforce and sustainability programs. So it's a very good spot to incubate the possibility of a third-party accreditor for sustainability education. And we also partner extensively with the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. This presentation, if you've attended any of our workshops or roundtables or the community of practice, you may have seen parts of this presentation, but the nature of this work is to be iterative. So it has been updated to reflect the latest input while continuing to share the story of the work that we are doing in this project. And it begins with the story of proliferation and messiness, the story of this line. In 2012 and 2017, Shirley Vincent was commissioned to do a really thorough program census for sustainability degrees in the United States. That was commissioned by GCSE. So the story that Shirley Vincent uncovered was this, the first sustainability program at ASU proliferated more programs through 2012 with a steep increase through 2022. Unfortunately, there is no current census of sustainability programs. We think there are approximately 1,000 degree programs, and this is mostly in the US and Canada. At the same time, Vincent realized that there was a separate line of what she called IESE, Interdisciplinary Environmental and Sustainability and Energy Baccalaureate and Graduate Programs. Environmental studies and sciences, of course, goes way back before 2006, and these programs continue to thrive as their own discipline and as their own degree pathway. Adding to the mix are minors, concentrations, and certificates. Depending how you search and what you include, you may find as many as 3,539 programs in the ASHE Community Hub database of sustainability and related programs. So the scope of this work is quite large indeed. These programs were created to meet student interest. Students care about sustainability and they want to do something to contribute to a sustainable future and life on Earth. So the programs were created for students. The programs were also created to better define higher education's response to the climate crisis. This is one of my favorite books by Brian Alexander. This book is about to receive a major award from AAC&U as an influential work on higher education. Universities on Fire, in my opinion, is the playbook for higher education in climate crisis. And these programs in sustainability, interdisciplinary, energy, all of these related programs are really part of higher education's response to climate crisis. At the same time, of course, there are many other trends challenging higher education at this time, from enrollment declines to a changing workforce, economy, and political landscape. We're going to be seeing institutional consolidation and increasing challenges to higher education, which to me says now is the time to strengthen sustainability education so that these programs can become a really important part of higher education in its response to the climate crisis. Now, from a student perspective, there's a lot to navigate. A student is interested in sustainability. They come to college as a first-year student, and they do not know what to major in. There's no clear navigation for these career paths. And there are many organizations working to better define this space. GCSE kind of took on the sustainability degree pathways, but of course, this complements and supports other work in the field. Second Nature focuses on climate action from higher ed. The new National Sustainability Society, as I mentioned, is at that workforce interface with academia. ASHE has been the most significant organization in this space for decades now. And their piece is really the sustainability across the disciplines work, as well as the campus sustainability piece that they have done so well. The Association for Environmental Studies and Sciences, which actually grew out of the National Council for Science and the Environment, is, going strong, developing environmental studies and sciences program. I should also mention the Association for American Society for Literature and the Environment, ASLE. They've co-located with ACE and kind of bring the humanities component to sustainability curriculum. The NAAEE focuses on environmental education and a lot of K-12 work, as well as educating what's sometimes called informal educators, the folks who work at nature centers and so forth. NAAEE actually accredits environmental education programs at a few universities in the US. And then the Carnegie elective classifications, kind of the newest endeavor in the space, is looking to create a new Carnegie elective around sustainability. So what's a student to do? I add this asterisk to remind myself to mention that this stock photo actually represents the population most likely to major in sustainability. As you all know, it's overwhelmingly female, tends to be very Caucasian in the 70 and 80%, depending on what research you look at. So a really important consideration in how do we diversify the professional field of sustainability at businesses, at nonprofits, in our federal agencies. How do we diversify sustainability? That begins with diversifying the major, and we feel that that begins with better defining the value proposition of a sustainability degree so that it is appealing to more students and their families and can be better understood by employers. So diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been really a driving goal of this work. We recently published a book chapter about the work that we've been doing, and I just included this graphic to emphasize that there are many change drivers and many areas for work in this field, and what we are focusing on is the program level, and that's why we've invited all of you as program directors to look at how we can leverage change at the program level for sustainability and sustainability related degrees. We had two wonderful co-op students from Northeastern University last year at GCSE, and we had them do a mini census following Shirley Vincent's research model. We gave them 100 pretty random universities and colleges to look at, including community colleges, tribal colleges, HBCUs, R1 universities who were ASHE STARS reporters, schools named by Times Higher Ed sustainability rankings, and then some, really randomly selected colleges and universities. So we gave them 100 schools to look at, and we said, imagine you want to major in sustainability, go. This is what they came up with for program keywords. So you probably see your own program keywords here. Their report is available along with their recommendations from a student or potential student perspective. So the second piece of the story that we've been discussing now is the sustainability skills gap. You've probably seen the most recent updates to this conversation. A new LinkedIn report says that the green skills crunch is getting worse, that there are so many green jobs and employers are unable to find qualified candidates for these jobs, that there's some kind of mismatch between higher ed programs and what employers are looking for. Which is leading to programs outside higher education, micro-credentials and so forth, as well as just on-the-job training for sustainability. So how can sustainability degree programs work more closely with employers to meet this sustainability skills gap? This will be the topic of our lunchtime panel on Friday with Kevin Doyle of Yale and Ashley Allen, who is a consultant in this space and formerly was at Oatly. So I've asked several people, well, what are the skills for sustainability that employers were looking for? And everybody says, oh, there is no list. So I asked ChatGPT what these skills were. So here's just an example of maybe what's part of the skills gap, the technical skills on the one hand, and the professional skills, or what we used to call soft skills, that are really embedded into the key competencies work that we'll be focusing on. So again, the question of the skills gap is how do we marry these technical skills to the professional skills and better meet the needs of employers while developing students as change agents. I absolutely love the New Green Learning Agenda and this research by Christina Kwok and Olivia Casey. And they also kind of had their own framework for articulating the green skills framework. And we'll be looking at this at our DC workshop. So we had some roundtables with employers and with students and alumni, recent graduates of sustainability degree programs. And we think there's a need to really bust the myth of the sustainability career pipeline. we've had this idea that students are interested in sustainability, so we offer them a sustainability degree, which will spit them out into a wonderful sustainability career. But of course, we're not that into pipelines. It's really more of a sustainability career watershed, where you have students coming in, both from the professional world for reskilling and upskilling. Students come to sustainability degrees through lots of different disciplines, and they go into many different career fields. There's a whole conversation around what is a green job, what is a sustainability career, how do we better define the professional pathway for sustainability. This is, to use another water metaphor, a confluence. On the one hand, proliferation of degree programs. On the other hand, a skills gap that affects hiring. This has led to questions of quality, diversity, and impact. These questions formed the NASEM committee, which authored the report Strengthening Sustainability Programs and Curricula at the Undergraduate and Graduate Levels in 2020. I'm sure that you've read it. This is the report that really motivated our work and this sincere inquiry into competencies, the key competencies, and best practices for sustainability degree programs. We think it's a simple question of backwards design. How do you meet the skills gap with prepared sustainability professionals? You do this through quality sustainability degree programs. How do you get those? Through consistent program level standards and outcomes. Where do those come from? They are grounded in a key competencies in sustainability framework. Which brings us to the key competencies framework. Most of you will be familiar with papers by Arnhem Week, Aaron Redmond, Marco Reichman, Katja Bringers, and Jordan King, all active scholars in this space who have defined these 8 interrelated key competencies for sustainability education. A key competency is a cluster of competencies that acts as an umbrella for both technical skills and professional skills in a particular area. We created a module in response to input from our community of practice. This module has nice little videos about each of the key competency frameworks, competencies, and how they connect in the framework. And it has an accompanying workbook where a student can apply each of the steps in this problem-solving framework to a community-based sustainability challenge of their choosing, giving it a place-based emphasis. So this module is free. I myself am really looking forward to teaching with it in a sustainability capstone course in the spring. Katja and Jordan are so great to work with, and they really emphasize the diligent scholarship since the mid-2000s that really grew out of literature review. It came out of the community and really is an expression of convergence from international work, various experts, and key stakeholders. In 2022, GCSE produced a proposal statement. We did interviews and surveys to kind of further develop this work. And I like to mention that that proposal statement was named in the ASHE 2023 Sustainable Campus Index as a significant publication for the year, again, to emphasize the need to collaborate with other organizations in this space, such as ASHE. We've shared with you a list of the key scholarship and reports that have informed our work. Of course, this list could triple, quadruple in size, but these are the papers that we have really sought to respond to and include, and we think they can be helpful background reading for you as well. So I'm going to give you a sneak preview of the updated key competencies framework. This is an update from 2021 Bringers et al. And we're very fortunate that Jordan King will be with us in DC, and he will further discuss and unpack this. So I'm just giving you a sneak preview of the problem-solving process that the key competencies and sustainability really inform. Here is the key competencies that begin the problem-solving process with systems thinking, futures thinking, and strategic thinking. The gray box represents the planning process, which is informed and bounded by values thinking. And I will say that values thinking has been the most discussed competency of all of them. Whose values? What are we talking about? How does this include other worldviews, epistemologies, and ontologies? Values thinking plays a leading role in this whole framework integrated into each of these stages. And then there's interpersonal competency and the intrapersonal competency leading to implementation, right? That's the trans-academic piece. How does all of this translate into climate action, to realization and evaluation on the ground? That's the implementation competency, also one of the newer competencies that came out of the Delphi study. All of this is contained in the 8th competency, which is integrated problem solving. So that's just a sneak preview of the 8 interrelated key competencies in sustainability. We'll talk more about that in DC. Which brings us to the question of scope and scale. Well, what do you mean by a sustainability program? If you were going to accredit sustainability programs, which ones? At what level? How do you decide? Who gets to choose what a sustainability program is? This slide has been incredibly helpful in helping people just see where their program lives in these 4 dimensions. The key competencies can be used in general education, in sustainability across the curriculum. There's a fantastic new publication from ASHE that uses the same framework and applies the key competencies in traditional academic disciplinary competencies. It's really cool. Then there are sustainability-related disciplinary-based programs. This would be like your green MBA, an architecture program with an emphasis in sustainability. So this is what we call the sustainability-related programs. Environmental studies and sciences often has sustainability in its program name, so that might be sustainability-related while still being the discipline of environmental studies and sciences. And then there are these newer emergent sustainability programs, often characterized by a problem-solving orientation. These are some informal characteristics that I myself have just noticed. Can you define what a sustainability degree is by the profession that it's preparing you for? So sustainability degrees prepare students for sustainability careers. That's one way to think about it. There's a problem-solving, change-making orientation. These degrees include a strong focus on climate literacy and environmental justice, as well as environmental literacy and climate justice, and also include, resilience, energy, regeneration. All of these related emergent fields kind of fall under the umbrella still of sustainability education. And then lastly, there's this emphasis on trans-academic work. How can the program have real-world application and impact? So that's a little taste of the conversation we've had around scope. The goal of this work has been to establish best practices that provide dynamic, context-sensitive guidance for a wide diversity of programs. We'll talk more about this in DC as well. This brings us to the best practices for sustainability and sustainability-related programs. I like to say at the end of the day, programs got to do program stuff. So these areas will seem familiar. There are 8 areas The core areas of curriculum, teaching and learning, assessment and evaluation, and unit organization and focus. I think that last one is going to be really interesting for you all to talk about in Washington, D.C., because of the challenges of organizing and funding and managing an interdisciplinary program like sustainability. So these are the core areas. Each area has approximately 4 best practices in it. So here's a roadmap. This is your high-level overview of what we're talking about in the best practices. Another thing I like to say is, how do we bring the innovation from the edge to the center and really take all of the things that you all stretch so hard to do? Every sustainability program that I have talked to is underfunded and the faculty are stretched too thin. It's one of the biggest barriers. So how do we take these practices and redefine the program with those practices at the heart of it? Is that even possible? I think that will be a very interesting conversation for us to have. Then there are these essential support areas. Of course, every program at every institution can't do every one of these things, but you can't really have a strong program without institutional support in the leadership, without campus and community sustainability. You kind of have to be walking the talk. Certain things we can do for students and ways we really need to better support faculty in these sustainability degree programs. So here's the high-level roadmap to those areas. And again, we look forward in DC to kind of unpacking the next level of that work with you. The best practices, the 4 plus 4, the core areas and the support areas, can lead to standards. We want to be asking you, what would it look like for you to meet these best practices? They may be aspirational. There may be things that you could do better with support or tools that could be developed. So the best practices would inform standards. And then something we might not get into as much, but we also envision a process whereby a program can better define itself, weaving throughout these standards its own specialization, a transformative topic. Your program might specialize in water or energy or food or justice. Not every program can do everything. So how can you do these best practices with your specialization area in mind? And how can your program define for yourself a transformative theme, right? We've seen what happens with a standalone standard for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've really sought to embed those transformative themes like climate justice, like equity, like diversity, allowing programs to define those themes in a way that is meaningful and accessible in your institutional, regional, political context so that these aspects, these transformative themes can be woven throughout the standards. An accreditation system is a set of standards and a process. So the next step of it would be really looking at what is the process where sustainability programs can define themselves through their unique transformative themes and topics. So in each of the best practice areas, we're going to talk about how does your program do this? What evidence do you have of this practice? Are there exemplar programs that we could uplift and learn from? And as I said earlier, what tools and support would help you do this better? So you might pause just for a moment here and think about what has maybe popped into your head about your own program, areas where you feel strong, areas where you might be looking for ways to improve. And that's why we've also had you fill out that program survey. We really want to assess how leading programs such as yours are meeting these best practices. All right, last section of this presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I think it's useful to just kind of get on the same page about accreditation. As a faculty member, I've always sort of cringed at accreditation. I know it's a lot of work, it's expensive. Sometimes it seems I don't know, annoying. Of course, your university is accredited by one of the regional accrediting bodies. But where did those come from? Accreditation, if you just look a little bit into the history of accreditation, accreditation has come out of periods of rapid expansion and change. So, coming back to that proliferation story, it makes sense that accreditation can kind of help to integrate after a period of robust proliferation. A lot of these programs are now at maturity. So, how do we sort out what the program really means as a professional training through developing accreditation standards? So, I just think it's really interesting that both of these GI bills led to a lot of expansion and training programs, and that expanded the regional accrediting system. In 1996, the Council on Higher Education Accreditation was established. Chia believes that the academic community and not the government should be determining academic quality. And I really resonate with the Chia philosophy and community. They're very much about transparency, equity, community defined standards, and quality assurance. Really dedicated to quality assurance. So, our goal has been to explore becoming a recognized accreditor by Chia. Chia accredits the accreditor. So that is kind of one end goal for this work. Programs can be recognized by Chia or by the Department of Education, or in many cases, by both. So these are some of the specialized accreditors that I have studied and kind of been inspired by. In particular, the AQEP teacher preparation standards, I think, are really good. The standards for social workers are kind of a similar normative field. Social workers kind of espouse a particular set of values. ABET, of course, is the closest thing. ABET accredits not just engineering, but STEM and environmental science. If you didn't know that, ABET does accredit in the environmental science area and STEM. So that's an interesting model. ABET is an international accreditor, accrediting 674 programs at 920 colleges in 42 countries, right? Huge. So there's a really strong model to follow there, including the Engineering for One Planet standards, which kind of live with the ABET accreditation. So there's lots of different ways to work with accrediting bodies like ABET. Chia also has an international accrediting arm, the CIQG. So international accreditation is also a possibility. The European Union and Australia use a similar key competencies framework, and they have a national framework for it. So that's also an option. The Sustainability Education Accreditation Commission would be formed by this community to accredit sustainability degree programs. And at one of the CHIA meetings, CHIA president Cynthia Jackson Hammond, who I think is awesome, she said, accreditation is a lever for innovation. So how can accreditation for sustainability be a lever for transformation, not just of your program? Yes, program improvement is a great goal, but how can your program be strengthened in order to be the lever that transforms higher education, especially in preparation for challenges to come in the future? This work has been funded in the last 3 years by the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation. It's always had these 5 elements grounded in justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. And starting from inclusive participation, I can say at this point that more than 400 individuals have contributed to this work through roundtables, workshops, surveys, expert interviews, and the sustainability education community of practice at GCSE. The key competencies piece is its own scholarship. Like the key competencies is its own thing, but we really sought to build on that work and apply it to this problem. We developed resources, professional development, and so forth. And now we're really just getting into this yellow box, which is where we will be working next weekend in Washington, D.C., really looking at transformative program evaluation. Because what do we have now? There are no common shared program evaluation standards for sustainability. So that's the grant. We've been presenting at all the conferences for the last couple of years. And I just have to say that the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. Program directors like yourself understand the benefits of accreditation. We think that it might help you gain more support from your institutions, better articulate the value of sustainability degree programs, making them more visible and more accessible for a wider diversity of students. And yeah, people just get it, and the response has been overwhelmingly pretty positive. There's lots of ways that I would like to expand participation in this work from the scholars team that we've developed. I'd love to work more with students and alumni through the National Sustainability Society, the NSS. I'd love to develop an industry advisory group. Again, something we might talk about with that panel on Friday. And the program directors cohort. After the DC workshop, I'll be launching a professional development course to pilot the best practices and standards that you all will be contributing to. That is the program directors cohort that I will invite you to. This would all lead to Sustainability Education Accreditation Commission. A commission is a group that is brought together. It's really all it is. It's not a new organization. It's more like a distributed process and organization working with other organizations in the space to represent your interests and your best practices for these programs. I have compiled all of the work of the grant sort of in a portfolio website at sustedu.org. And that has the key competencies, the learning module I mentioned. It has the intern report, Should I Major in Sustainability? It unpacks, there's a video with Katja Bringers unpacking the 4D model. You can review the best practices. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of this website, sustedu.org, you can review the best practices that we'll be discussing. It talks about everyone who's contributed to the work. And I just keep putting stuff on there. So it's sort of our portfolio and proof of concept space. So you can check that out if you want to. And here's the program directors cohort. This is going to start right after our workshop. It's largely asynchronous, and it's really a soft pilot for different programs. There's been a lot of interest in this from some new programs who want to develop with these best practices in mind. How cool would that be? As well as mature programs who might be, 10 years in, and it's time to reassess and, update the curriculum and kind of up-level the program. So I think this is going to be really fun. Terry Balzer and Rod Parnell will be co-facilitating this with me, and this is through ASHE's professional development. We will probably run a second cohort next summer, 2025. That brings me to just almost the very last thing I want to say, which is here's the value add that we think we can offer, whether or not we proceed to become a recognized accrediting body for sustainability. We have contracted with Weave Education. This is a specialized software for program evaluation and accreditation. So in the program director's cohort, we have we're going to have each of the best practices are already embedded inside this program. So you click on one of these, whoops, you click on one of these boxes and write your narrative about how you're using a competency framework or how you're doing internships or how you're doing faculty professional development, whatever. It's just a vastly improved program evaluation process. So you don't have this nightmare of Google Docs flying back and forth. You can pull lots of interesting data from this, and programs can then be listed in a directory of programs who are accredited or pre-accredited or seeking accreditation, and that thus might be more accessible to students and fulfill some of that coherence function that I've been looking for with a program census. Like, how can we just better understand the degree programs that are available and help students better understand and help employers better understand what graduates of these programs can do? We think that employers will value graduates of accredited sustainability degree programs as part of this sustainability skills gap conversation. Now, not everything has been, positive input. I just reread some of the feedback from one of our CLAC members, Dr. Manulani Alulimeyer at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu. And, she really posed a powerful critique of this whole concept of key competencies and defining sustainability. She said, let us ask better questions of how people shape their programs and why and with whom and how. And she really encouraged us to build in ways to let systems of their own excellence be outlined with their own ontological and epistemological yardstick. So I just want to acknowledge this as a really important consideration of the work. There is no one way to do sustainability. Um, so we need to carry that with us into our conversations in Washington, D.C. as well. Last slide is my favorite slide. I attended a workshop at the NAAEE conference in Tucson, and I went to a session on inclusive facilitation, facilitated by a wonderful young woman named Sylvia Hadnot. And she said, we should be grateful for problems like these, because a problem is a campfire that we can all sit around. And that's how we change the culture. So when we come together to talk about this problem of proliferation and messiness and quality and value, what we're really talking about is how do we change the culture of higher ed, and how can accreditation be part of that conversation? So I can't wait to meet with you next week in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your attention to this slideshow, because now I don't have to do this during our time together, and we can use that time to talk to your heart's content about these very important topics.